The Clean Air Act established 6 criteria pollutants that were of major concern when it was passed in 1970, and most of these do continue to be of concern to human health. These pollutants include carbon monoxide, which comes out of your tailpipe of your car, particulate matter, these are inhalable, coarse meaning somewhat large compared to cells in your lungs, particles, sulfur dioxide, but also sulfur oxides in general, nitrogen oxides, ground level ozone. So remember, ozone is good if it's up in the stratosphere, but if it's down in the troposphere with us, it's not great. Ozone is unique because it forms as a result of an interaction or reaction between nitrogen oxides and volatile organic carbon compounds in the atmosphere. So it's considered to be a secondary pollutant because it's not emitted directly, but it forms as a result of this reaction in the atmosphere. And then lead is the last one. So lead is something we'll talk about. It's not included in the air quality index, but it is of concern, and less so now than it used to be. Note that VOCs, volatile organic compounds, are not on the list, but they are a very common pollutant of concern. So short-term impacts to health are shown here, and I'll just go through the list, but first I want to point out that the 4 major criteria pollutants that you hear about when people talk about air quality and air quality index are sulfur dioxide, ozone, nitrogen oxides, and particulate matter. All of these cause similar issues. They cause lung diseases like asthma, bronchitis, and emphysema. They can lead to lung cancer, and they also inflame airways, which can lead to other issues down the line associated with your respiratory and your cardiovascular systems. Sulfur oxides form secondary particles that can get deep into sensitive areas of your lung, and so they can damage your lungs. Ozone also damages lungs and causes permanent scar tissue in lungs, so they cannot recover. Nitrogen oxides are important. They can damage health directly, but also they lead to ground level ozone, which is a very, very problematic to human health. Particulate matter is a problem in areas where there's forest fires or a lot of dust. So where I live in Arizona, particulate matter can be very bad on days when we have dust storms, and it's often a natural cause, but it still leads to decreased lung function, causes difficulty breathing, and it can lead to heart issues. So it could lead to heart attack or just irregular heartbeats. And then carbon monoxide, many of you probably already know some of the damage of carbon monoxide, but basically it gets in your blood system and impedes the ability to carry oxygen through the blood, and so it can cause asphyxiation. So basically you die from not being able to get blood to your limbs and throughout your body. All of these also cause long-term exposure, and that's important because most of us are exposed to these over our lifetime, and so we're getting long-term chronic exposure. So sulfur dioxide leads to bronchitis or inflammation of the bronchi, so that's in your lungs. Ozone also inflames your lungs and causes fibrosis of the lungs, which is permanent scarring. Carbon monoxide, we said, leads to heart disease because it reduces the capacity of your blood system to carry oxygen, so that can lead to damage to your heart. Nitrogen oxides, they suppress your immune response to lung infections, and so that's going to impair lung function. And then particulate matter, so that's dust and smoke. It causes respiratory and cardiovascular issues, so again, that's damage to your heart and your lungs. Just as a reminder, ozone, we said it's good up in the stratosphere, not so great in the troposphere. That's where it harms our lungs, and it also damages plants. Lead exposure is very interesting. So lead is one of those 6 criteria pollutants. And lead, if it can be an issue if it gets in water and you drink it. It's also an issue if you live in an area that has lead dust. So the main place that people are exposed to lead now is if they live in old homes that have lead paint, and as that paint peels and chips off of surfaces, you can breathe it in and be exposed to lead, and it gets into your bloodstream that way. Also, some people live near contaminated soil, and so they can track in the contaminated soil, and then lead can get into the atmosphere. In the 1980s and 1990s, there was widespread elevated levels of lead in people's bloodstreams, and that was as a result of leaded gasoline. Leaded gasoline was completely outlawed in 1986, and so since then the amount of lead that's in the atmosphere has really decreased, and like I said, most of the exposure is through isolated sources such as lead-based paints. Lead is a problem because it causes neurological effects. So it lowers IQs, it causes learning deficits, especially things like math skills are lowered. And so that's a big problem for children who are in school and can't develop as they should. It also leads to high blood pressure and heart disease in adults.